Well, thank you very much for having me speak to your group. It's really an honor to talk with you folks and tell you a little bit about street epistemology. And before I get into this, I really want it to be a back and forth. Okay, so just as if I was talking to somebody on the street, I want it to be a conversation. So if at any point I say something that's confusing, or you want to challenge me or get more information about it, by all means, just please raise your hand. Maybe Paul can speak up, maybe repeat the question back for me. That would probably be really helpful.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Because I really want this to be a back and forth, and I don't want it to be boring, and I don't want your eyes glazing over. And I know that your group goes to the farmer's market and has conversations with people. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Not everybody here, but several people.
Okay.
Did you hear that?
I did hear that, yeah. Not everybody, but several people.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's perfect. In fact, I've run into a few students at some of the local colleges, and they're part of the Secular Student Alliance, and they table all the time. Now, tabling generally means putting out some atheist literature and hoping people come up to you and then debate with them until they walk away angry. And right? Is that what the farmer's market experience is like too?
Well, the farmer's market experience is a little flipped around in that in your setup, they come to you and you ask them questions. In our farmer's market, typically what happens is they ask us questions.
Okay. Yeah, they see you. Yes, more often than not, I will flag people down and ask if they want to talk. And then if they say no, I don't hassle them. They're free to go, right? But sometimes people will come up to me too. But that's good. And you know, one of the objectives that I'm hoping to get away from this is, and I have realistic ones, but I would really love it if a few of you might, if you're not doing it already, maybe take some of the suggestions and some of the examples that I'm about to show you and work that into your routine so that people aren't walking away mad or angry at the atheist, but maybe they walk away thinking about it and maybe even thanking you for the conversation. I don't, that might be what you're doing now, but that's really one of my goals. And I'm just hopeful that maybe people even watching this later on might walk away with the same sort of ideas. Now, I do have a longer intervention or conversation that I want to show you. It's with a gentleman named Nerville. But before I get into that, I want to show my presentation and go through a PowerPoint. But again, I don't want to bore y'all, okay? So please feel free to interject, raise your hand, and maybe Paul can repeat the question to me, because I really do want this to be a back and forth. Okay. Do you have the first slide showing there, Paul?
Yeah, street epistemology, conducting effective and reflective conversations.
Okay, we can go to the next slide then.
Okay.
So very high level, street epistemology really was just originated from the book by Peter Boghossian about a manual for creating atheists. Very edgy title, but the gist of it is basically how to have respectful and effective conversations with believers. And it's not to tell anybody what to think, but just simply asking questions, listening, repeating back what you've just heard, and getting your interlocutor, your conversation partner, to actually think about what it is they're telling you that they believe in. Now, it's based on the Socratic method. It's sincere and cordial. Now, when I first started doing this, you may have seen some of my older videos. They're bad. Like, I was yelling at people and arguing and jeopardizing relationships. In fact, I ran into one guy last weekend, and he wasn't all that happy to see me, and that's a large result of the way that I approached him a year ago. So I've done a lot of damage by being very aggressive. And the cool thing about this book is that it helps you have meaningful conversations with believers that gets them to think about their belief. Now, I'm not targeting a specific belief. I'm not going out and just looking for Muslims to talk to or Christians or whatever. When I ask somebody if they want to speak with me, I'll just, hey, you know, do you have 5 minutes to chat? I don't really know what I'm getting into. I might be speaking with an atheist that believes in karma or someone that's spiritual. Those are the toughest ones. Jehovah's Witnesses, Muslims. You never know what you're going to get until you start talking with them. And I'm not focusing on the person. I'm not challenging a person or teasing anybody, but I really want to examine the belief that they're holding. Now, beliefs are such a large part of a person's identity, and it's really challenging to tease out the belief from the person. But this is probably, I think, the best tool that we might have in our arsenal to do it. Any questions so far?
I got a question.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Please.
Can you hear me?
I can actually, yes. If I can't, maybe I'll ask Paul to repeat.
Okay. Right, so you said Socratic method is sort of just getting the person to articulate what they believe through asking questions. I remember from Peter's book that he also talked about, and there was some special word for it, the elans something. It had a very a Greek name. But I thought that...
Elinkus. Elinkus?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Don't remember.
Okay, it was, but the point was, I think it was the step in the Socratic method, I thought, that was now, once they have articulated their beliefs, now you're trying to sort of expose, in some way, the fallacy, the logical fallacy in it. So I kind of took that's also part of the Socratic method. It's more than just understanding what they're saying. It's now moving beyond and sort of pointing out some problem with it. Is that
right? Yeah, that's really good. I'm glad that you mentioned that, sir. Yes, the Elinkus it's a E-L-E-C-H-U-S. There's an N in there. E-L-E-N-C-H-U-S. Yes, that's that point of the conversation where you start asking questions to start peeling back the layers of how somebody arrived at the belief, and they're so convinced that it's true. The heart of it, the epistemology of the belief. Hence the Street Epistemology. So yeah, that's a very big part of it. In fact, when we rolled this video of Nerville, one of the main reasons why he believes is because he was raised in it. So I don't just blatantly come out and say, well, you're so foolish for just believing what you were taught. I mean, how ridiculous. If I had done that, what would he have done? He probably would have shut down. He would have ended the conversation. He would have maybe walked away mad. You probably would notice his body language getting closed.
Yeah.
That Elinkus phase of just asking the questions to examine how a person arrived at the belief and is it reliable is such a key part of it. And this technique really is getting noticed. The videos are getting noticed. The work that I'm doing and a few other people that are recording their interventions and putting them on YouTube, professional apologists are noticing this. And they're getting very concerned because we're not debating. We're not, everyone in this room probably knows the typical way to respond to Pascal's wager, right? Well, it's a gamble, it's a bet. Can you really fool your God? But when you're performing street epistemology, when you're trying to get to the heart of why they hold the belief, dwelling on facts and the apologetics that your believer might be feeding you is not the way to get to the root cause of their belief. So this technique is really an end run around the traditional apologetics that you might see a Ray Comfort using, or a William Lane Craig, or even anyone that comes up to you at the farmer's market. They might be just using those apologetics, and this just completely circumvents it, and it really throws people. And it's concerning these apologists because they're so used to being at the top of the heap, telling all these believers the right answers to give. And very few people have really thought about why they hold the belief. They're very good at defending it, but they're not very good at explaining why they hold it. And that's what's so beautiful about this. Yeah. Did I hear an amen in there? I thought I did. Okay. I was like, amen. All right. So,
all right, I was going to ask you a question,
please.
But you just answered it.
Okay.
So, does anybody else have a question for right now? Okay.
Press on.
Press on.
So this isn't just for religious beliefs either. Now, Boghossian's book is really about having conversations with believers about God. But many people are using these techniques for conversations with people about global warming and GMOs and superstitions and karma. Some of the best conversations that I've had have been with atheists that still hold supernatural beliefs to one extent or the other. And it seems like the conversations with them are a little bit more productive because being atheists, maybe they have a certain amount of skepticism already built in, I'm not sure. But we're usually able to plow through these ideas of karma and reincarnation and those types of things pretty quickly. But it's not for religious beliefs only. It's not debate or arguing. It's not an attack or an assertion. It's just merely asking questions. And it's definitely not proselytizing. I've heard people refer to this as atheist evangelism, and whenever I hear it, I hate hearing it because I'm not going out and yelling at somebody and telling them what to think like a street preacher would do, or a priest, or an imam. I'm not threatening you that you need to believe this or stop believing it because there's going to be some penalty if you don't. I'm merely asking questions to help a person uncover the reason why they hold the belief in the first place. And there's a huge difference. So I kind of rankle whenever I hear that this is proselytizing or... sorry about that. I've got a guest coming over to the house. Okay.
If only all proselytizing was merely asking questions about why somebody believes something.
Right? Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Just a little side note on the apologist kind of freak out. They get really concerned about what we're starting to do, and we're really gaining momentum. There are more and more people doing this, and not just going on the street. That's the whole street part of it. But having these conversations over social media, Twitter, Facebook, email, over the telephone, games. I've had people that they're learning these techniques from the videos and going out and playing Call of Duty and going off in a little chat room and having discussions about religious beliefs using these techniques. So there's really no limit to it. But I wanted to say that the apologists, what they're starting to do is they're warning their flock to, if they find themselves in a situation where if you're at the farmer's market and you start talking to an atheist and they start respectfully challenging how you have this belief, that, oh my gosh, this might be a street epistemologist, and what do you need to do? Walk away. And don't engage in the conversation. And better yet, come back to us, and we can point you into the right verse in our holy book that will tell you, why we're right. So they are very, very worried about that. Okay, there's a little quick slide here with Peter. Next slide there. Okay, so in Boghossian's book, faith is a really big part of it. It's a big foundation. The gentleman that was talking about the Elenchus probably remembers in the book that faith is really the foundation of most people's beliefs. Now, in my experience, that's not always the case. It's to the point now, when I first started, I wanted I'd ask a question, do you have faith? Let's start talking about faith. But as you start doing this and refining the technique, I don't assume that people use faith for the reason why they believe in a God. I'll wait until they say the F word first before we start unpacking what that means. Okay? So that might just be a recommendation. Even if somebody says that they're evidence-based, I believe in this because, like in the video coming up, Nerville, he believes in it because he read somewhere in a science journal that the universe has a repeating pattern to it. Okay, that seems evidence-based, but with one question, we completely sidestep that rabbit hole, and we get to the main reason why he believes. But in the case with him, actually, faith wasn't a reason, at least not yet. But what I found is that as you start asking the questions and people start throwing out these reasons why, if they don't mention faith from the start, usually by the third or fourth question, faith is a reason why they believe. Okay. There's so many different definitions of faith. I bet if we were to ask everyone in the room to write down their definition of faith, it would probably be somewhat different, each one. And that's no different with a room full of believers. Even people within the same church and the same, pew, they probably all come back with slightly different definitions. So these days, I don't force a definition on anybody. I just say, what is your definition? And then we just go off of that. A couple common ones might be believing without evidence, believing in something that you can't see, hoping in something that you can't see. Those are somewhat common ones, but I've heard probably 100 different definitions of it. But it doesn't matter what the definition is, in my opinion. It's whether the method is reliable. And that's really the whole purpose of this. The epistemology part of this is getting to the root cause of why someone holds a belief in the first place. That's the epistemology that you want to help them understand. And help me understand too. When I say, can you help me understand this, in essence, I'm really trying to get them to see how they understand that working as well. A lot of people never really think about these things. And if you've watched any of the videos, you've probably walked away with that. Okay.
Right.
We can go to the next slide here, I think. Well, any questions so far? Yeah.
Outsider for faith, I think. The OTFF, is that John Loftus's thing?
Yeah, that's John Loftus's outsider test for faith. I'll be using this in the video with Nerville. It's a very, very effective way of framing a question to a believer, to ask them essentially, how is your belief any different? If I'm talking with a Muslim, I might say, well, I'm certain that you believe this, but how is your belief? How is the faith that you're using to get to Allah any different than the faith that a Christian might use? And what it really comes down to is them discovering that it's no different. And that understanding, that realization, especially when you can capture it on camera and see that discovery happen, it's a beautiful thing. It's a very powerful thing. And it's way more effective to have them discover it by just asking questions than to tell them that your faith is no different than all those other people.
I have a question.
Yes.
And I don't know if this is going a little bit off topic. I don't know. Sure. I've only seen the two breakdown tutorials and then the ones that we've seen here today. And one question that I kept wanting you to ask, and I don't know if it's one that you've asked in other videos, but if you have, I'm kind of curious what the response people have given is how do people will say that, well, I believe because of faith, but I wanted to ask them, how does that faith tell you what to believe?
Yeah.
Because faith tells one person to believe this and one person to believe that. How does it tell you, how does it give you something to believe in, or does it just justify what you already believe? Have you...
That's good. That's good. I actually wouldn't mind examining that a little bit. That's why I love doing these things, because you guys give me the best ideas. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, there might be a little overlap on that when you watch this video, but again, I'm not so much interested in what they believe, which might be a reason why I haven't asked that question. It's more about how they've come to believe it. And it's so easy to get mired into the doctrine, into the holy books and all those stories and the references and the miracles and all this other stuff. So that I've learned is really, those are just huge detours. Go ahead.
Take it.
I beg your pardon?
That wasn't the direction I was being to take it, but just if that wasn't the direction I was intending to take it, but if somebody says, I believe because of faith, I want, what does that mean? You believe, how do you get from I have faith to therefore there's a God, or therefore Jesus is my Savior, therefore, what's the connection?
Well,
I have faith, so what?
How does faith lead you to believe the particular things that you're believing?
Regardless of what the particular thing is.
Right.
How does it get you there?
Yeah, that's good. I really like focusing on the reliability of it. Like, I know faith is bringing you to Allah. I know that faith is bringing you to Vishnu or Jesus. but is that path a reliable and repeatable one? So, but yeah, I get your point. I see what you're saying. And I guess, if I were to run into an individual again, then that would probably be a really good, follow-up discussion.
Cool.
All right. So
I'll look for it in the next video.
Who should I give credit to? What's your name?
Andrew.
Cool.
Andrew.
I'll try to work in your name in the next video if I use that.
Oh, thank you.
Sure. In fact, there's one video that I did. I don't know if you've seen. Some of you may have seen the video with James. It's a black fellow.
Yeah, one we just watched.
Last name is Turing, by the way.
No, it's not.
Andrew was the one who noted in the notes on YouTube that you had to squeeze in Turing because of some other...
Yeah, so I've done that before. That's what I was going to mention. So for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, somebody on Twitter, I think I tweeted something like, I'm approaching X number of followers. If I hit this goal, I'll say whatever word you'd like me to say in the next encounter that I do. And somebody subscribed and said that they wanted me to use the word Turing, Alan Turing's last name. So I worked it in. Anyways, okay. So the next slide here is conducting street epistemology. And I completely understand that a very small percentage of people that watch the videos or read the book or join a particular Facebook group where we talk about this stuff will actually go out on the street and do this. It's admittedly a somewhat intimidating thing to do. So I know that it's not meant for everybody, but you don't have to go out on the street. You can do this at the farmer's market, if you want, or with a family member, or with somebody on the bus or an airplane. I was on an airplane ride before and just had a great conversation with this woman, and faith was the reason why she held the belief. She was sitting in the window, I was in the aisle, and there was this woman just, in the middle seat, just listening the whole time while we were having this really deep conversation. And it was amazing. So we're very realistic about where these things happen, but if you are planning on going out to do it, there's a lot of things that you can do. You can prepare for it. You can choose a good location. I would recommend like a park or a university or some place where people they have a little time. They may be walking in between classes, or they wouldn't mind sitting and talking with you or standing and talking with you for 5 or 10 minutes. And set your expectation. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I got a question. Watching your videos, of course, I only see it from your viewpoint. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, one thing that strikes me is, I don't know, if I'm walking by and some guy says, hey, do you have 5 minutes to talk to me? And do you mind if I record this? I'm thinking, this guy's creepy, man. I mean, how do you counter that? Because I don't get why people are, so disarmed by you right away. It seems a little creepy.
I would be a little worried about that too. Like, if somebody were to do that, there are some things that I'll do. Like, I don't normally walk around with a patch over my eye. That's just, I'm having an eye issue. So I usually look a little bit less threatening, I think. No offense to people that have patches, but this is just temporary. I don't wear atheist attire. Like, I do have shirts that say this is what an atheist looks like and that type of stuff. I just try to dress casually. I'm not dressed up to the nines. I try to look very approachable. I'm walking around these days with like a whiteboard and a marker. So it almost looks like I'm doing a survey and I'm being inquisitive and that type of thing. So a lot of it is, man, that's a really good question. A lot of it is really about being friendly, and people are always watching you. So when I go to a location like a school, I might spend 20 minutes just saying hello, good morning, how's it going, is class starting soon? And people are watching those interactions, those little brief ones. So I'm not yelling at anyone, I'm not threatening, I'm shaking hands, I'm smiling, I'm joking around with people. So I think people see that, and that goes a long way as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't often wonder that as well. Like, why would anyone want to stop and talk with you? But now, I've never run statistics on this, but it seems like probably 1 out of every 3 times I ask somebody if they want to speak, they do. It might even be as as many as maybe 2 out of 3. Like, it's high. It's very high. Like, and even when I disclose what I'm asking them about, they might stop and say, "Well, what are you what are you asking?" Even when I disclose that, I just want to ask a few questions about how did you come to your God belief and why. A lot of people are very interested in talking about that. And I don't know if it's because generally in our society we don't talk about those things, and this is finally a chance for them to get it out. I don't exactly know why, but generally people are very excited about it, to the point where there's one guy, Miguel, he even approached me. I was just taking a little break, I think changing out the battery in my camera or something, and he's like, "Hey man, I saw you on here for a couple days. What are you doing?" And we had the best conversation. So I don't know if that really answers your question. I hope it did, but just try to be positive and friendly, and people will come up to you. I also try to end things on a real positive note, okay? Not only for the benefit of the other people watching, but for the person that you're speaking with. I like to shake their hand. I try to give them a card now where they can email me. We can have a discussion later, or find a time to meet again. I mean, I'm getting messages all the time now of street preachers. I mean, 2 weeks ago, a street preacher called to ask me where I've been, because you want to know where have you been, Anthony? I haven't seen you in a while. So that's good. You want to try to end positively and meet again. If I have a conversation with somebody and they see me again and never want to talk with me, then that's a bad thing. That I failed in some way. And again, these don't have to be face to face. Yes, Robin.
I have a question for you, Anthony. You mentioned changing out the battery in your camera. So what are you using, like a chest mount GoPro or something? Something unobtrusive or?
Yes, I do. It's not too far away, but yeah, it's straps, camera's about here, and I can have it kind of pointing down as I'm walking around, and then if somebody says they want, I'm okay to record them, I'll flip it up. And that's really handy. I've actually... It's a GoPro.
The camera's unobtrusive. It's small, it's compact, there's not a camera in their face. That probably helps things well.
Yeah, I think so. I think so, and also, hate to stereotype, but I think the younger generation is a little bit more used to Instagramming everything and recording themselves and putting themselves on YouTube. So there may be a generational thing too, what might answer the original question of how do you get these people to come up to you. I think they're used to this now. So what I'm asking them to do is not all that uncommon, because they probably did it 3 times earlier that day. But just maybe with a friend.
And do you do this anywhere else besides at the university? Because it seems like you do have a lot of young people that come up.
I initially started talking with street preachers in front of the Alamo. So tourist traps. I've gone to bus stops and parks. Bus stops are awfully noisy. So when I choose a location, I actually have to think a little bit about the production value of it, because there are quite a few people that watch the videos now, and if they can't hear what's going on, it's not going to really do me any good. So that is somewhat of a factor as well. Public universities, I think, are really good because those people are in an educational environment. They're already used to being challenged a little bit and ask questions and think about what it is they believe and why. So it's like it's a perfect location, and there's such a diverse group of people across all different age groups and religions. So I'm really attached to that location. And the other factor too is these conversations mean more if I can meet with a person again. Like you watched the promo video of that woman. I met with her 2 weeks later, and she was at the 95% mark on the confidence of her belief about 2 weeks later. So when I can meet with somebody again and have 3 or 4 or 10 conversations, that's sort of the holy grail of street epistemology. If we can get something like that on camera to show the progression of somebody, that would just be ideal. So I try to factor all that stuff in as I decide to pick a location.
So I have one other question. Paul and I went to a farmer's market, and we stopped at a booth that had it was a Baptist, right?
Yeah.
And we're not good at this, and it seemed as if the guy we were talking to kept going right to the Bible, and we couldn't get him out of the Bible to talk to him on any other level. He kept quoting and what were you calling him? Presuppositionalist. It's already, in his head that this is it, and we didn't know how to do that. So, what would your advice be on? And how do you deal with a presuppositionalist? First of all, how do you say it?
Presuppositionalist. Yeah, I just call them presups, just for sure.
Presups, there you go.
They're presups. I've met one once, and that was right around the time that I was reading the book. And I handled it in all the wrong ways, which was to get into why the Bible is wrong and the contradictions and all that stuff. So when you find yourself, it doesn't matter if you're talking with a presup or Jehovah's Witness or a Baptist or Christian or Catholic or whatever, or Muslim, once you start debating the doctrine, you've fallen off track. Because that's generally not the reason why they believe. And there's a couple ways to sidestep that. You'll see how I sidestep it with Nerville. Now, it's not the Bible. His was the repeating nature of space, I think, something like that. What you can do is just ask them, if they're so hardcore about the Bible, is that what you said for him?
Yeah.
You might get into a discussion about the reliability of it. How can he be so sure that it's actually true? And is it testable in some way? So you can kind of get into a discussion about the testability of it. Or you can go into the outsider test for faith. Why should I believe you if the Muslim is just as convinced when he tells me about his book? Or you can go to the.
What would you quoting from the Bible again? When we did try that. We said
yeah.
We just talked to Muslim. He said 100%, and he said, "Well, he's wrong because here's where he's wrong," and went back into the Bible. It was really difficult.
It is challenging, especially if there are others in his group watching. I don't know if that was the case.
Yeah.
That's really tough, and that's the hardest environment that I've been in where I've talked. There's a video of a guy, he's wearing a yellow orange shirt, it says Jesus on it, and he's a street preacher, and there were 4 other street preachers around him waiting for their turn to get up. But at that point, he's on a stage, and he's in preach mode, he's not in listen mode.
Yeah.
And what I would really, if you really wanted to have a good conversation with him, I would schedule a time to sit down with him for a cup of coffee or at the park, or listen to him preach for 20 minutes and take notes so he can observe you listening to him, so that maybe he'll do that in return, and get him out of that environment where he's on a stage. Because what he's hoping for, I think generally, I follow the street preacher community pretty closely on social media and stuff. It's sort of a weird hobby of mine. But, I mean, it is. I've got weird hobbies. But they really want to draw a crowd. So if they can get you worked up and yelling at them, and they're yelling at you, and then 20 people start gathering around, they see that as a success. So you would have to completely get out of that environment, I think, to have a really good conversation. These days, I probably won't engage with a preacher when they're on the stage again. Now, I might meet them for coffee or something like that when they've settled down, and we can just have a really good, honest, get them off script, basically. But when they're in preach mode, it's so tough. So don't be discouraged with that. That's a really tough demographic to work with anyways. And when they're on the stage, then it's immensely more difficult.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Ever considered using a shill to get things started? I know at our tent, Thursdays, people walk by the hundreds because it's a shopping mode that they're in. Could you use a shill to get them started? We break, and then maybe one person. We've had maybe 2 or 3 stop behind somebody who's arguing.
So if I could just have some... I'm terribly sorry.
Use some in your group to get it started.
He's asking if it's a good idea to have a shill, somebody in your own group that is engaged in a conversation, so that other people at the farmer's market who happen to be walking by listen in, and then they can be also engaged in conversation.
Okay.
Did I say that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it. Just to get them started.
I wouldn't really recommend that. I mean, you can have such good conversations with people. It's not really necessary. In fact, when you're conducting a street epistemology encounter, the more distractions you have, the more difficult it is, because even though you want people to observe you and listen to the conversation so they can learn from it, most people have a difficult time not getting involved in the talk because they're just so eager to jump in, and it ends up derailing any progress that you have. So I really don't like talking to more than one person at a time. I do have some videos where I talk to two, and I have to really work hard to go back and forth and keep track of what his definition is and her definition of faith. And what I find is that when she gives an answer, it actually influences his answer, or at least that's my suspicion. So this technique, I think, really works best on a one-on-one situation, and there's really no need to stir the pot to get the topic going, in my opinion.
Okay. Great. Should we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, the next slide just talks about an example. Now, if I was there in your room, I would ask if there was any believers or anyone that holds maybe a supernatural belief, and maybe we can actually do an encounter. I tried that once, and people are just very shy about that. So I brought along a video to play where you can watch a real encounter, and then I'd love to. This is gonna. I've done this before where we've played a video and we've paused it like a third of the way through, and then I talk to it, and then we resume the video, and then we play it again at the 2/3 mark. That doesn't usually work technically in this Skype environment, so I'd love to just really have it played for you. It's about seven and a half minutes or something like that, and then I'll be taking notes as it plays, and if you can take notes too, I want you to challenge me on it. If there's something that I've said that's disturbing or good, I mean, I really want to hear from you, because I want to get better at this. And I won't get better at it unless people point out the areas where I failed in some way. So you're not going to hurt my feelings if that's the case.
Is this the Nerville one, or is this one you're going to play over the Skype?
I'd love it if you can play it locally. I think it would work better if you just played it locally. The Nerville.
Is it the Nerville? Okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be better. And I'll mute myself over here so you don't hear any more doorbells ringing or something like that. And are there any questions while they're queuing that up?
I got it.
It's queued up.
Okay.
I don't know if the sound is working.
Is it not?
Let's try it. I don't hear anything.
Oh, you're gonna have to do this. Oh, I don't know what. Yeah, okay.
Did you turn it off?
I think it shuts off. Turn it off automatically. Yeah, I know.
Hi. Do you have 5 minutes for a quick interview? Do you have 5 minutes for a quick interview? Oh, actually, I can time it too. I got a little timer here. You mind if I record you?
Oh, yeah, okay.
What is your name?
I'm Nerville.
What is it?
Nerville.
How do you spell the first name?
Nerville.
Nerville.
Yeah, Nerville.
Nerville. Very nice to meet you. I'm Anthony.
Same to meet you. Same to you. Yeah, it's nice to meet you.
Nerville. Okay. What I'm doing, Nerville, is interviewing people to see if they believe in any gods.
Okay.
Which god have you chosen to worship?
Oh, God, the God who created heaven and earth, like the Bible.
Bible.
Yeah.
Is it the Christian God that you believe in?
Yeah, the Christian God.
How tied are you to the belief being true? If 100% was, I'm 100% confident that it's true, and 0% is I have no confidence that it's true.
I have 100% confidence that it's true. Yeah.
What is putting you so high on the confidence of the belief?
Well, the universe, the creation of the universe suggests that that the universe has a recurring pattern, which elucidates that that there was a mind behind such creation, because like
there's a repeating pattern to the universe.
There's a repeating pattern to the universe.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I didn't even think I've ever heard that before.
Yeah.
And now, how did you conclude that the repeating pattern of the universe makes the belief in the Christian God all the more real? Why didn't you go to Vishnu or Allah or something like that?
Okay, so first of all, I was born into Christianity, basically.
Okay.
I was born into Christianity, and my parents read the Bible to me when I was small, and also science also proves that the universe it's created in a recurring pattern. So I read a lot of articles, read a lot of things here and there, and I concluded.
If you were to discover 3 weeks from now that science really figured out that they were mistaken on it, and the universe doesn't repeat in a pattern, is that what you said it does?
Yeah.
That it actually doesn't work in that way.
Yeah.
And there was some other, I don't know, scientific explanation for it. Would you still hold the belief in the God?
Yeah, I would still,
okay.
Yeah.
So you're not believing in the God because of that specific reason?
No, not because of that specific.
Why are you believing in it?
I'm believing in God because miracles have happened in my family.
Miracles?
Miracles have happened in my family. My dad also encourages me to believe that believing in a God actually makes things you go according to the way things are supposed to go.
Okay.
Like for example, my dad has had a disastrous life ever since he was a kid, but he believed in God and said God was going to liberate him. But now he's starting to see that things are unfolding in his favor, basically.
So because your father, and correct me if I'm off here, but because your father has chosen to believe in the Christian God, and he sees good things happening in his life, he attributes them to the Christian God and is telling you that you should be believing in that God as well?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay. How on earth does he know that it's the Christian God that's doing it?
Oh, it's because he's a staunch believer of reading the Bible. When he was small, he was a catechist in the Catholic Church and stuff.
So just like you being raised in it, he was also raised in it? Yeah,
he was also raised in it by his grandfather.
What would you say to somebody that maybe was raised, I talk to all sorts of different people, they're raised in completely different beliefs. They read all these other different religious books. They've concluded 100%. They're confident that Vishnu is the one true God, that Allah is the one true God. You guys can't all be correct.
Yeah.
How would we go about figuring out who should be more...
Who should be correct or who should be? Yeah. That's the thing. I always ask myself that question, how are people so drawn into their own belief that they think that it's right and stuff? Let me see. I guess everyone has their own truth, basically.
Everyone has their own truth?
Yeah, if they believe that that's what they believe, then.
Is the Muslim that believes in Allah and the woman that believes in Vishnu just as true in their belief as you with your belief?
Yeah. I hold it, They're just as true as me as in my...
The doctrines are so terribly different.
Yeah. If they believe that that's what they hold true to, what they believe to, then who am I to say that it's wrong for them to believe it's wrong for them to believe what they believe in?
By that logic, then, if you were born in a family in India and raised to believe in Vishnu, would you be just as confident in your belief in Vishnu standing here today?
Yeah, I would be as confident in my beliefs then. Yeah.
Does that alarm you in any way? That truth might be dependent on your location and how you happen to be raised? Shouldn't truth be constant?
It alarms me. Yeah. It does alarm me. Yes. Yeah, truth should be constant. It should.
If that's true, true, Nerville, shouldn't that be moving you down on the confidence of your belief? If you would readily admit that truth is only what it happens to be if you've been raised a particular way.
It's alarming. It is alarming. I just think about these things every day, but
Have you stopped thinking about them now?
Completely? No.
There's other things going on. You're standing here, right? You probably have other distractions.
Yeah.
These are pretty deep thoughts. What did you think about the conversation?
It was informational. I talked to you. It was good.
All right. Well, I have a card here for you,
Okay.
and if you ever want to chat with me, you can just reach me via email.
Okay.
I'd love to really examine this idea of the truth of the belief, and how can your belief be more true or just as true as somebody else's, if it's really just a matter of how you've been raised and what you happen to be taught.
Oh, and also the experiences.
Okay. Yeah, you said miracles, experiences. Yeah, you've had experiences.
Yeah, I've also had.
So when you see miraculous things happen, and when you have experiences, you attribute those to your God.
Yeah.
And what do you think the Muslim would do with the same sort of miracles and experiences?
The same thing I would do.
And what do you think the Hindu might do?
The same. Pray to their gods. Thank them. Yeah.
Is 100% the right spot to be if that's really the case, on the confidence of your belief?
100%. I believe so. I believe so. I believe so. Yes.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank
and
you.
If you want to talk some more, just email me.
Okay.
Or if you see me just standing out here not talking to somebody, then come up to me again, all right?
Okay. Thank you.
I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you ever meet him again?
I unfortunately have not met him yet, and I'm still waiting to hear from him. I really hope that he reaches out. There's so many things that I want to cover with that video, and I'm just tempted to dive into it, but I'd love it if you can feel free to just pepper me with questions about it. I can either speak to it, or we can just jump into the questions, whichever you prefer.
I think
I've
Paul
got
has
a
a
couple
question.
thoughts. When you, the way you, well, it's reflecting. You know what reflection is? Have you ever been a mediator, by the way? Seriously.
Just between my kids.
Yeah. Well, but reflection is a technique in mediation where you say the thing back to the person, and there's a lot of the spirit of mediation in what you do. When I forget what point it was, but he was in kind of an awkward place, and you said something that you just reflected back to him that let him say, hey, it's okay we can be comfortable here. I'm not going to press you on this. You can sit with that. I think it's okay because I'm just here right with you. That whole spirit is a real particular thing, and it lets the person just deal with the question on their own. I thought that was very notable.
Thank you. Yeah, reflection or I've said before is acting like a mirror. So I want to listen very closely to what Nerville is saying, so that I can formulate. So that I can either summarize what he's just said. And you probably noticed at one point I said, "Correct me if I'm mistaken here," or if I'm off. Did I say something like that? Like, if I'm off here, correct me if I'm wrong. But are you saying this? That's really important, because if I've misunderstood, he can correct me. But the sheer fact that I'm asking the question imparts to him that I honestly want to understand him, so that's important. But perhaps even more importantly, him hearing back what he's just said, that reflecting back to him is critical. It's so much more important than just trying to debunk why he believes it, but just reflect back what he's telling you as to why he believes. And this conversation wasn't about faith at all. If I were to meet with him again, I suspect that he would probably mention that, but it didn't come up here, so I didn't mention it.
I've had it happen in mediation where you reflect something back to somebody, and when they hear it come out of somebody else's mouth, it's accurate. It can stop people dead in their tracks.
Yeah.
Realize, oh, that's what I'm doing, that's what I'm saying, that's what I think, to hear it come from somebody else. So that can be a really strong technique.
Yeah, I had a conversation with this one guy in front of the Alamo. What was his name? Matt. If you do a search for my name and Matt, He's wearing a blue shirt. But yeah, he says something like he has no choice but to use faith to get to his God belief. And when I repeated that back, you don't have a choice to believe. It's like, well, it's not that I don't have a choice, but that's what he said. And it's so important for them to hear that back. And there were also a lot of pauses in this video. There were a lot of quiet moments where he would say something and I'd wait a second before coming back with another question so that he can hear what he just said. It's so common for people to want to fill those gaps of silence with talk when it is usually the worst thing that you can do, because you're interrupting their ability to hear what they just said to you. Did you notice were there any questions?
No, I think we're ready to hear your critique of it.
He was talking about the repeating pattern of the universe. Now, we probably could have spent an hour talking about the latest scientific findings and all that, but and this kind of reminded me of your situation at the farmer's market with the Baptist and the precept Baptist about the Bible. I asked him, if we were to one day discover that the universe didn't function in that manner and there's not a repeating pattern, would you still believe it? And he said, yes. And then I came back and said, well, then it doesn't sound like that's the reason why you believe. And he agreed that it wasn't. So that is a wonderful question to ask, and it's a great way to just go right around that detour that would suck you in for an hour and get you nowhere and entrench him further in the belief. But we can get to the reason why. And the main reason why Nerville holds the belief is not faith, as far as I know. But what was the main reason? Do anyone remember?
His upbringing, his dad.
Yeah.
Miracles in his life.
And experiences, but mainly his dad.
He did mention miracles at first, and I forgot about that, and that's one of the reasons I carry that whiteboard around, is to write that down. But he reminded me, he may have felt obligated to bring that up because we completely highlighted the shaky nature of believing in something because you were just taught it. Like, I think if that was a really reliable method, it probably wouldn't have been necessary for him to remind me about his personal experiences and miracles. But did you see what we did, how we used the outsider test for faith on the miracle part of it?
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't come out and just say, well, dude, I mean, everyone believes in miracles. Why are you so special? But I asked him questions. Do you believe, do you believe your miracles are working because of the Christian God? Yes. Do you think a Muslim, how do you think a Muslim would attribute their miracles? The same way. And what do you think the Hindu would do? The same thing. That is it. That is it in a nutshell. It's asking those reflective questions in a manner that gets them to think and ponder on it. And what you saw on camera was fascinating. Like, I've watched this maybe 20 times, and each time I watch it, I really love it. I understand it's not for everybody, but I really am fascinated by it. But I really believe that, and I can say this from previous conversations I've had with people, the power of the technique is probably going to happen when he goes home. When he's riding his bike or in his car or taking the bus home and laying in bed and thinking about that talk, that's when the antidote gets delivered, so to speak. That's when he'll really be thinking about it. Now, the unfortunate thing is there aren't a lot of people out there having these conversations. So when Nerville goes to school the next day, or it's the weekend and he meets with his family and goes to church and all these other things, talks to his dad on the phone or whatever, that's it, basically. Like, I have one shot, I spent 7 minutes with him, but it can only go so far. When he gets re-immersed into the culture that reinforces the belief that he was raised in, I suspect, I don't know this for sure, but I suspect that that's going to dilute the impact of the conversation that I've had with him. And that's why it's so important that people know these types of conversations to have, because if he runs into another, if there was a secular student alliance at this university, and they're running a booth, and he's interested, and there's a second person that he runs into that asks these same questions, or possibly different, or maybe the topic of faith comes up, and they can get into the unreliability of it, that just gets the ball rolling. And that's why we want to get as many people familiar with this. And I don't mind taking up a Saturday to talk to your group, because it's so important that a person like Nerville run into another person like myself, so that he can really think about this and keep that momentum going.
Anthony?
Mm-hmm.
A question. I'm curious about the whiteboard. How do you use it in specific? Are you just using it to take notes for yourself, or is your subject also looking at the whiteboard, or are you kind of using it to help show that you're reflecting or anything like that?
I heard that. Sometimes it could be distracting. Like, you noticed when I started jotting something down, he stopped talking to let me write. And that was the first time anyone's ever done that. So this is a really nice guy. He's very, he's very friendly. He's a very friendly, charitable guy. I get the sense. So it could be a little bit distracting, but generally, no, I like it because I'm horrible at remembering people's names. So I get to write down his name, and his name was a little bit of a challenge. So I'll write down his name. If they have a definition of faith, I'll write it down. I use it more for myself, but I do recognize that there are some additional benefits to it. I feel like it conveys a certain sense of authority as I'm walking around campus with it, like I'm doing some survey or something. So I do admit that could be a factor. I generally really just use it for my own benefit so I can keep track of the talk, because sometimes these conversations go on for 30 minutes or an hour.
Wow.
And when it's all said and done, I'll sit down and take my notes and jot them into my phone, so that if I ever do have a second conversation, I can refer to those.
Yeah.
And I have a little magnetic timer that's stuck to it. It's like a magnetic whiteboard, so I've got a little timer. And that's cool too, because when I ask somebody if they want to talk and I say, listen, I'm literally timing it for 5 minutes, they know that they can go at the end of 5, and that usually, I think that goes a long way to increasing the likelihood that someone's going to stop and talk with me too, by having that. Let's see. Did you get the part about how we talked about truth, and everyone has their own idea of what truth is? He didn't say it here, but it's a very common thing to hear the younger folks say that, the Muslim has the right to believe in whatever they want. It's okay if they believe that. It's okay. But, and I probably could have used a better word than terrible, but I said the doctrines are so terribly different. But it's really common to hear the younger people especially to say, well, they have a right to believe in that. So what I actually tend to say these days is something to the effect of, well, I understand that everyone has a right. While we would probably both agree that everyone has a right to believe in whatever God they want to, wouldn't you want to believe in the correct one, the true one? How can we figure out that your belief is more true than hers, for example? Let's see. I also like the part at the end about the miracles. I actually forgot about it, even though I wrote it down. I thought the conversation was over. He brought it up again. And I really like to talk about truth. Shouldn't truth be the same whether we're standing in San Antonio or Karachi? So that's a really good discussion as well. All in all, that was really fun. I really liked that talk in particular. He was a really nice guy and very animated and honest. If the conversation partner is honest with you, when you're talking to a preacher and they're on that stage like I talked about, they're on a script, and you're not going to get an honest answer from them, in my opinion. They're going to tell you sort of the scripted response and the response that they would think that their buddies would expect them to give. This gentleman here was very honest, very sincere, and very authentic. If you can find a person like that, it's such a huge part of the talk. And if they're honest with themselves, they're probably going to be honest with you as you ask these questions. Any questions from the group?
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you want to sit here? Yeah.
Sure.
That's what we should be doing.
Hi, I'm Karina.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Hey, I have a question. So I don't generally have a lot of confrontations with really religious zealots. What I come across more are people who believe in pseudoscience, or people who have a general belief in spiritualism, pantheism. So how would you approach somebody who believes that there's some entity out there greater than us that set the universe in motion, that there's got to be something more sophisticated than us, and then just kind of spontaneous life happening? What would be an approach to go in that direction?
Excellent question. Yes, it's dealing with the spiritualist or the deist that would say there had to have been a God that started all this, and sure, they don't answer prayers or miracles. I find the person that is spiritual, like God is a spirit, and God is love. Those are the people that I dislike speaking with the most, because they're so hard to pin down.
Yes.
And that's really where I think definitions are always important, but when you're talking to a person like that, let's define what God is. Let's define what spiritual means to you. Let's just define what a personal experience means. If they're all over the place, they can find any excuse to wiggle around. That I feel like they're not being honest. And maybe I might just say, let's just take a step back and examine how important it is to believe true things. Do you want to go through life believing in things that are true? Start with that. Because some people have actually responded to say, I'm okay going through life believing in things that are not true. I can accept that. And I'm not getting into the understanding, like I'm sort of under the understanding that you can only know, there are very few things that you can know for sure, and I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about the importance of believing in things that are true. And some people are content with not. What I would do there is just try to point out the deficiencies of going through life believing in things that are not true, and maybe starting there. But I don't know if I have a really good answer for you, to be quite honest, because those are the people that I struggle with the most. I don't usually find them in Texas, but I think if I were in Portland or San Luis Obispo, I might find a lot more spiritual people and the sort of the touchy-feely spiritual God is love type of thing. Those are really, really tough. And I don't really have a good answer for you, but I might try to focus more on the importance of believing in true things rather than the whole God concept, because it's such a wiggly thing.
Okay. Just on a personal note, I was curious how you got into this. Did you start off as an atheist activist? Then you read Peter Boghossian's book and this just really interested you, or were you already out there doing some informal street epistemology?
Well, let's see. It all kind of happened very close around the same time. Like, I had read the book. I knew that I wanted to do something. I wasn't sure if... I've always been a skeptic, even at an early age. Didn't really believe in any of the God stuff. Sort of went along with it, until we started having kids and they started asking the big questions in life, and then I started realizing, like, wow, this is really important to me, and I don't want to, I want to raise my kids to be skeptical and respectfully challenge even what we tell them. So that was sort of the foundation of this, and then I wanted to sort of make an impact on the world, and that's about around the time where I read the book, and I saw a couple of videos online where atheists were debating street preachers, and I was really intrigued by that. And that was really my first foray into it. Like, I wanted to go out and debate people, because I spent so much time learning all the counter apologetics that every real atheist, right? Every true atheist should know how to defend atheism. only to find out that those techniques were the worst things that you can do if you really wanted to have these types of conversations with people. So it really kind of all happened within like a 2 or 3 month period where I knew I wanted to do something. I knew I wanted to record it. I knew I wanted to interface with believers. And I read the book, and I realized that I was going about it the wrong way. And then I started tweeting with Boghossian, and he's giving me advice, and it just sort of all blossomed. And that's really the genesis of it. I hope that answers your question. And it's really just kind of expanded from there. The next slide I want to talk about is the future of SE, but I'll entertain any more questions that you guys have.
Questions?
So in your one of your previous slides, you mentioned that SE might also be appropriate for like conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what I took it. But I'm not quite seeing how that fits, because I get SE kind of targets faith, but of course a conspiracy theorist, which we also come up with against a lot in our group, it seems like, is going to say, no, it's all about the evidence, and I've got all this evidence to show you, that my belief is true. It has nothing to do with faith. Well, can you really use SE for that kind of situation, or do you?
Great question, and the answer is yes. Half the time when I talk to somebody, even a religious believer, maybe it's 40% of the time, they do say it's evidence, and they mean it. Like, they really think that the Bible is the inerrant Word of God. Okay? So you can take these questions the evidence route, or you can take them the faith-based route. Sometimes as you start getting into evidence, it really kind of morphs into faith. But yeah, if you're talking to a conspiracy theorist that thinks that, we never landed on the moon, or the Twin Towers, that was a government inside job.
Right.
You can still have these questions. A good question for an evidence-based person is, if you are evidence-based, anyone that is truly evidence-based should be willing to revise their position if new evidence came along. What would you accept as evidence to change your mind? Now, very few people that are locked into a conspiracy theory have even entertained what that answer might be. And if they say there's nothing that would change my mind, then you can start getting into how, the disturbing nature of that, of going through life believing in something that you can never falsify. I'd advise you to not use the word falsify. I've learned the hard way that people immediately think that it means that what they're believing in is false. I might say something like, how can we test it? So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. I'll try that. See what happens.
Yeah, I just say, as an evidence-based person, I'm sure you've thought about what you would accept to change your mind. Have you, what would you accept to change your mind that we really did land on the moon? Would I need to get, an astronaut here, a former astronaut, or can we tour NASA together? Is there a video? What would you need to see to change your mind? And if they're unable to say what that would be, then you can get into the dangerous natures of that.
Yeah, right.
And that works across the board, whether it's, GMOs or superstitions or God beliefs.
Yeah, right, or God beliefs. Are we ready to move on then? Yeah. Okay. I'll get the slide.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, so the next slide is the future of SE. And how are we doing on time? Am I keeping you guys?
No,
we're good.
Okay.
We have all day.
We don't have a life.
I doubt that. Come on. So the future of this, I really believe it's going to be the online videos. People really don't have time these days to read books. It seems like more and more that's going the wayside. So a 5-minute video or a 7-minute video or a 30-minute video goes a long way. You've seen it most of you have watched the first 2 tutorials, and I really appreciate you doing that. Even those take a lot of time. So getting this down to a very quick, that's why I love that little promo that we showed. It might encourage 1 or 2 of you to go and investigate it a little bit further. Okay, if that's great, if 1 of you or 2 of you walk away a little bit more interested in this, then this is completely worth my time. We do have, there is a private and public Street Epistemology Facebook group and page. The group is private, so if you post on it, nobody on your wall will see it, so you don't have to worry about that if that's an issue for you. You can just become a member, submit a join request, become a member, and just lurk. There are people that are way, way better at this than I am, that are having conversations over Twitter and social media and email and phone and doing videos too. And they're really, really good at it, and we discuss it. We'll show a video like Nerville, like the one that you watched, and we'll have 50 to 100 comments of people all over the world. There are people all over the world interested in this, and we're weighing in on it, and people are telling me what I should have done better, and well, this was good. So we're really getting better and better at it. There is a website, streetepistemology.com. We're updating it so that that's going to be an aggregator site. Anything that you'd ever want to know about this will be on there. We are seeing more and more prominent atheists using this. Aaron Ra did that tour in Australia with, it's called the Unholy Trinity Tour. You may have seen stuff about that. And he talks about faith and how unreliable faith is. We're seeing Matt Dillahunty on the Atheist Experience on a few phone calls. He's asking some of the Socratic questions. We're starting to really see this more mainstream, and I really think that even though, yes, hitting somebody over the head with some facts about why the Earth is not 6,000 years old might change a few people's minds, but generally it doesn't, and it will encrust them further into the belief, and that's why we really want to get the word out about this. And of course there's an app coming out. Boghossian's been working on this app. He's been promoting it recently. It's called Atheos. Atheos, and there's a Facebook group and a Twitter account, and this is the tool that I always wish that I had after I'd read the book. It will immerse you in these conversations with people over your tablet or your phone, okay, Android and Apple devices. So you can log into this thing, not log in, you just boot it up, you're in it, and you'll find yourself having a conversation with a believer. And what is the ideal response? You'll see a question, or the believer will say something, and you'll see a couple of responses. And it's kind of like one of those, you know, like those choose your own adventure books. Some of the app is like that, where, you know, depending on what you say, you find yourself in a different spot, and you work your way through a conversation. And as you're doing it, you learn the right way to have the conversations, the ideal way. And you'll also learn the poor way, and why that response might be poor. So it's really, really good. Now, I mentioned the Secular Student Alliance. That's really huge. I think putting these tools in the hands of the younger generation, these college students, so that they're on their devices all day long anyway, so it's a great way to get this tool in their hands. And they're interfacing with believers. Like I mentioned with Nerville, if there was an SSA at this campus, there isn't. But if there was, and they were familiar with Street Epistemology, it might help progress him along that path of discovery that I may have set him on. That essentially wraps up my talk. I would, again, love it if you have any questions, and if you can't think of them now, I am online. The last slide there has my Twitter handle, and I'm on YouTube, and you can email me. I try to make myself as accessible as possible. This is the topic that I love talking about. Aside from my kids, I can't spend any more, how should I put this? I can't spend enough time talking about Street Epistemology, so this is a real treat for me to be with your group, and it's been a real pleasure. So any questions that you have, now's your chance to ask them, but if you've missed the opportunity, you can reach me online.
Anthony, I printed this out, and I think somebody that knows you may have created this. And it's a flow chart. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Do you think that, I mean, you didn't do this. My understanding is that you didn't do this, but do you approve of it? Should I make copies for everybody that's here?
I think it's a good start. I skimmed it. I didn't look it over religiously, but it's good. It is good. In fact, just this morning, somebody made a revision to that, and it's pretty good too. I haven't had time to promote it on social media. But no, that's good. I mean, it's way better than nothing or just going off the videos, and I thought it was helpful. That being said, we're putting together, there's a team of about 10 people that do these conversations, including myself. We're putting together a street epistemology guide. Now, I don't know if we'll ever make that public outside of the private Street Epistemology Facebook group, but it's going to be a comprehensive guide on how to have these conversations, from the location to choose to what are some great opening lines and all that stuff. So that might be out in about a month, hopefully. I think we have a meeting tomorrow to go over to see where we're at. But no, that flowchart is great.
Okay.
And that's what's so cool about this.
You mentioned
we're developing tools. I was just going to say, we're developing tools that are going to help people leapfrog way faster, way beyond where I am. And it's so exciting to see people pick up these tools like that flowchart or a video and have their first conversation and just nail it. It's such a joy to be able to watch that.
You mentioned the unholy trinity. We have Seth Andrews coming to speak to us, I think in June, is that right?
Yes.
So he's scheduled to come to San Luis Obispo and talk to us.
Cool.
Do you know if he is as well versed in this as the other two?
I would be surprised if he wasn't. Now, a couple notes on that. I did. You probably haven't gotten further along in it, but if you go to I think it's my 5th Street Epistemology tutorial, where I actually it's a non-religious discussion over Twitter about Obama. This woman is a Tea Partier who is convinced that Obama is a dictator and is not going to give up his power at the end of his term. So that's a really good one. But I asked Seth if he would. This was over Twitter, so I asked some prominent atheists if they would narrate the tweets, and he narrated one of them. So he donated his voice to it. Now, whether or not he watched that or spent any more time familiarizing himself with it, I don't know. He's had Peter on a couple times. His show. Side note, just a couple days ago, he asked on Twitter who would be a good guest to bring on. So if you want to put a plug in for me, I would be honored to be on his show. I'm a huge fan of it. So when he's out there, if you want to just put my name in his ear, I'd really appreciate that.
We will. We promise.
Cool.
Definitely.
That's a real treat to have him. How'd you swing that?
That's Anthony.
Anthony, I have one more comment. I've been reading the next book in our book club, our atheist book club, is The Moral Arc by
Michael Shermer.
And what you're doing connects up with something that I thought was really good in his book. He makes the point, we know that science is not a body of fact as much as it is the process. And of course, street epistemology is really quizzing people on their process as well. And he also makes the point in the book that, which I hadn't really considered before, is that democracy is really a process. It's not saying how we should rule. It's not saying what the ruling decision should be. It says, how do we figure out who's going to make the decisions? It's a process for figuring out who's going to make those decisions. And I see that common thread in all those things, and they mutually reinforce each other. Are you familiar with that book?
I am a little bit familiar with it. I haven't read it yet, but one of the intriguing things above what you've said is, my understanding is, one of his arguments is that once we come to a decision about something, it's very unlikely to slip back into it. Like, for example, I don't know, allowing women to vote. Like, once you come to the realization that it's a good thing to do, that the likelihood of slipping back to a time where we don't do that is quite unlikely. And that's what I believe is the moral arc that he's referring to. But I haven't read it yet. I'm really intrigued. I'm a really kind of an audiobook kind of guy, and I don't believe it's on audiobook yet. So that's kind of what's holding me back on that. But no, I'm very fascinated with Shermer, and I'd love to meet him one day.
Yeah, if you have a chance to check it out somehow, I'd recommend it. I think it will hook up with a lot of things that you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll check it out.
Anthony, you asked how we swung Seth.
Yeah.
He was kind of doing a tour up the California coast, so we were told about it. We were kind of a good way station between LA and San Francisco.
Oh,
so
perfect.
Which, by the way, leads me to the point that, do you ever go on tour? Or do you ever, we'd like to have people come out and visit and host them to speak, or even come to be a guest farmer's market.
Oh, that's so awesome. I would love that. I would absolutely love. I do have some family in Los Angeles, so I am on the West Coast, but I think I'm a little bit, maybe a little further south than you guys, I believe.
Yeah. You are 3.5 hours.
Yeah, but California is such a big state. But I would love it. I want to try to find a balance between, letting people know where I'm going to be, but also not to the point where, I'm jeopardizing my safety or anything like that.
Fascinated.
So, yeah, but I do get people that say, hey, just strangers, like, I'm going to be through San Antonio and I've been watching your videos and, can I come out and watch you? It's kind of tempting to do that, but sometimes you do have to cast a lot of lines to get a good one. I've always thought it would be cool to hand a camera to somebody so that they can be recording me and the other person talking, just for a slightly different angle. So, I would love any opportunity. If I can have these conversations every day, I would do it. And if I had the opportunity to do it with your fine group, it would be an honor.
Oh.
We would love to have you.
Yeah, that'd be so cool.
Well, I'll keep in touch with Robin. We've been messaging, so I'll keep in touch with her. And if that ever happens, if there's any chance I'm going to be near you, I'll let you know.
Great.
One question. Do you video all of your encounters, all of your conversations like this?
I really try to. Like I mentioned, that there's such a high percentage of people that will agree to talk with me on camera. Sometimes I spot somebody that is just really intriguing, like they have purple hair or they're wearing a really huge giant cross around their neck. That's really intriguing to me, and if they decline to be interviewed, I really have to fight. I've kind of reached this weird point where I want to have the conversation to help them, yet at the same time I need to maximize my efficiencies, because I now know that there are people watching and that might have a larger benefit to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense, yeah.
So if somebody says, no, don't film me, I'll say, with all due respect, I think I'm going to move on to somebody else. But if they're really intriguing, I'll offer to blur their face, and that usually gets them to agree to it. So there are some things that you can do to get that to happen. But yeah, it's not a good use of my time if I can't record it to share it with other people that want to learn this, because I want to inspire other people to get out and have these talks. And again, it doesn't have to be on the street. But the next time you're having a discussion with your son or your daughter or a brother or sister or family member or friend, if I can help get these tools into your hands, I want to try to do whatever I can to do it. And that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Absolutely. Wow. One other question. What's the most interesting or surprising thing that's happened in one of these encounters, or something that's really made you stop and think and question things? I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No. Remember, pauses are good.
Yeah.
I'm not uncomfortable. I'm just really thinking about it. Probably the realization that just because you're an atheist doesn't mean that you're a skeptic. When I first ran into, you watched the video too, right? If you did your homework, you would have seen the encounter with Tyler. It's probably my favorite one, because she's a non-believer who thinks prayer is silly, but she will do something good for somebody with the expectation that something good would happen to her. And we get in this wonderful discussion about karma. That's really maybe the first thing that comes to my mind. But, I have to remind myself whenever I start a conversation to be open to changing my mind. I am an agnostic atheist. I don't believe a God exists, but I don't say that I know for sure that a God doesn't exist. I'm open to changing my mind on it if there's sufficient evidence to do so. And I really try to approach every conversation that way. If I were talking to Nerville and he's correct in his belief, I'll be willing to change my mind on it. I'm open to changing my mind. And I always try to remind myself of that. It hasn't happened yet. And maybe one day it will. But until that time, I'm going to just keep getting out there and asking my questions.
Cool. Thank you.
Wow, that was fabulous,
Yeah.
Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.